Alex in Missouri has a question evidently for me. So Alex, welcome to the show. How can I help?
Hello. I am a viewer, first-time caller. I've heard you say before that you consider yourself a hard atheist. Is that correct?
Depending, yeah.
That you're convinced that God does not exist.
Correct.
I was wondering why are you convinced of that? I myself, I'm an agnostic atheist, and I've never really heard evidence of God not existing. So yeah.
Because the world doesn't look like we would expect the world to look like if in fact there were a God. If in fact there were a God that loved and cared about people, as many people are advocating, that God would have a moral obligation and the capacity to clear things up and let people know, yes, I'm the real God and those other gods are false. And the fact that a God hasn't done that. So basically, it's kind of the argument from divine hiddenness. The world does not appear as it would if in fact the God that people were advocating for existed. It's not an absolute, I can't be absolutely certain about anything, but I think it's more probable than not that the gods, if you made a list of all the gods and you believed in one of them, you would have to say all the others are made up. And so if somebody else believed in one of the others, they would have to look at it and say, all the others are made up. I'm agreeing with both of them. As far as we can tell, people have made up every single God. And until somebody gives me a way to tell the difference between a God that was a fiction invented and a God that's actually real, I think I'm justified in considering them all to be invented fictions.
Yeah, and we also need to consider the language that we're using here, right? Because you're saying like, oh, we don't see evidence for not a God, right? And like, we wouldn't use that standard for other things. Like, oh, well, is there evidence that there's no unicorns? Like, what's that look like? You know, like, well, there's things that we can look at in the world and we would expect to see if unicorns did exist, but we don't see. And so that's the reason why you and I might not have a belief in unicorns, for example. And I would say the same thing probably applies to a God belief. There are things that we would expect about the world to be true or for us to be able to observe if the specific God claims being made are true. And that's important as well because people define God in different ways. And there's different criteria as to what those gods would be. You know, obviously the omni arguments are pretty popular, right? Omnipresent, omniscient, and all that other stuff. But there's other ways people define gods as well. And you can look at those claims individually. But yeah, we wouldn't use that same standard for other stuff. You know?
Is that cleared up, Alex?
I feel like to address you, Matt, I feel like that's an argument against the Christian God.
No, no.
Or like a
Alex.
No? Okay.
How can it? Alex, did I mention the Christian God at all? Did I say Christian God at one time? Did I say it one time in responding to you?
No, I apologize that I misspoke. I don't actually mean that, but I'm saying I feel
it's
like
a God against. It is an argument against any proposed God that has any interest in demonstrating the truth of its existence to humans. I'm not saying it's possible. It's not impossible that they're, well, I mean, I don't know whether or not it's possible, but if you want to talk about a God that doesn't demonstrate the truth of existence and doesn't care to demonstrate the truth of its existence is now indistinguishable from its non-existence. If a God is hiding and preventing humans from finding it, then from our perspective, its existence is identical logically to its non-existence.
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
Cool. Let's ease on down the road. Thanks a lot for the call, Alex. Appreciate it.
There you go.